Natalie, they foreclosed. The house is gone.
What? That can't be right. I don't understand.
My parents sold my lake house without telling me. I learned about it from a cheerful phone call while sitting at the head of a boardroom table. The glass walls of the conference room reflected the Seattle skyline behind me. Rain streaked down the windows in silver lines while executives waited for my next instruction. My presentation was halfway through when my phone vibrated. Mom. I almost ignored it. Almost. The moment I answered, laughter exploded through the speaker. Natalie, sweetheart, everything worked out perfectly, my mother said. My father's voice echoed somewhere behind her. We finally closed the deal. I frowned. What deal? A brief silence followed. Then my mother laughed again. The lake house, of course. The buyer signed everything this morning. Chloe's wedding is saved. For a moment, the world stopped moving. The voices in the conference room disappeared. The rain vanished. Even my own breathing seemed to freeze. My lake house? I had never listed it for sale. I had never signed a contract. I had never authorized anyone to touch the property. Yet my parents sounded delighted. Proud. Victorious. As if they had done me a favor. My mother continued speaking. You know how important this wedding is. The Whitmores are expecting something spectacular. Family helps family, Natalie. Family helps family. The phrase struck like a knife. I stared through the rain-covered window at the city below. Thousands of people moved through the streets. None of them knew that a daughter had just discovered her parents had stolen her home. I have another meeting, I said quietly. Then I ended the call. The executives around the table exchanged nervous glances. Everyone expected me to continue the presentation. Instead, I opened my laptop. 3 clicks later, I accessed the county property database. My fingers moved with cold precision. Address. Parcel number. Search. The results appeared instantly. There it was. A transfer record. A completed sale. A forged signature. A $600,000 transaction. My name sat at the bottom of the document. But it wasn't my handwriting. Not even close. The room suddenly felt colder. One executive shifted. Uncomfortably. Another asked whether everything was all right. I looked up slowly. It's fine, I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Because beneath the calm, something dangerous was awakening. For most of my life, my family viewed me as the reliable daughter. The invisible daughter. The one who solved problems. The one who paid bills. The one who never complained. Meanwhile, Chloe was the star. The golden child. The future of the family. Every failure became someone else's responsibility. Every success became her achievement. 3 years earlier, when Chloe's luxury fashion company collapsed, my parents nearly lost their home. They never knew who rescued them. Every month, a mortgage payment appeared. Every month, the bank remained satisfied. Every month, disaster stayed away. I never told anyone the truth. I assumed protecting my family was enough. Now, sitting in that conference room, I realized how foolish that belief had been. The people stealing my property were the same people I had secretly protected for years. The realization settled heavily inside me. Not as pain. Not as heartbreak. As clarity. Pure, brutal clarity. The old Natalie would have called immediately. She would have cried. Argued. Demanded explanations. This Natalie did none of those things. Instead, I downloaded every document connected to the sale. Every page. Every signature. Every timestamp. Then I saved copies to 3 separate encrypted drives. One of the executives finally spoke. Natalie, should we postpone the acquisition meeting? I looked toward him. Toward all of them. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew the woman they saw as a quiet investment executive was actually one of the largest private shareholders in the company sitting behind her. Even fewer knew that several of the Whitmore family businesses depended on partnerships connected to her investment network. My parents certainly didn't know. To them, I was still the daughter who worked too much and stayed out of family affairs. That misunderstanding was about to become very expensive. I closed the laptop. The forged signature still burned in my memory. Somewhere in Idaho, my parents were probably celebrating. Somewhere, Chloe was choosing flowers for her dream wedding. They believed they had won. They believed I would accept the theft quietly. They believed I was powerless. For the first time in years, I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because I finally understood something important. The most dangerous people are rarely the loudest. Sometimes they are the ones nobody notices. And as rain continued to slide down the glass walls of the boardroom, I began planning the destruction of every lie my family had built their lives upon. The beginning of the betrayal had started 3 years earlier with a pink envelope. I still remember the afternoon sunlight pouring through my parents' kitchen windows in Boise. The house smelled faintly of coffee and lemon furniture polish. Everything looked normal. Until I saw the envelope lying on the counter. Final notice. The words seemed to glow. My father had left for work. My mother was visiting friends. The house was silent except for the ticking of an old wall clock. I picked up the letter. As I read, a heavy feeling settled in my stomach. The family home was weeks away from foreclosure. I sat down slowly. The numbers told a story my parents had desperately tried to hide. A second mortgage. Missed payments. Penalties. Growing interest. The source of the disaster was obvious. Chloe. 2 years earlier, she had convinced our parents to invest everything into her luxury fashion startup. She promised designer boutiques across the Northwest. She promised celebrity endorsements. She promised a future worth millions. Instead, the company collapsed. The stores closed. The investors vanished. The debt remained. Yet somehow Chloe escaped every consequence. She always did. My parents blamed the economy. Bad timing. Unfair competition. Everyone except Chloe. I remember staring at the foreclosure notice and feeling exhausted. Not angry. Not surprised. Just tired. Because deep down, I already knew what would happen if that house was lost. My parents would show up at my door. Their problems would become mine. Their debts would become mine. Their chaos would become mine. That evening I made a decision. Without telling anyone, I paid the overdue balance. Then I established automatic monthly payments. Every month afterward, money quietly left my account. Every month, the house survived. No one thanked me. Because no one knew. At first, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. Family was family. That was what I had always believed. Months turned into years. Vacations disappeared. Luxury purchases disappeared. Free weekends disappeared. I worked longer hours. Accepted larger projects. Expanded my investment portfolio. And every month, another payment left my account. Meanwhile, Chloe continued living like royalty. My parents praised her constantly. Every family gathering became another celebration of the golden child. Then everything changed because of one careless mistake. During tax season, I printed financial records for my accountant. One document showed a payment to the mortgage lender. I accidentally left the page inside my parents' study. The next day it was gone. At first, I assumed my father had found it. I imagined he might finally understand. Maybe he would call. Maybe he would thank me. He never did. Instead, something stranger happened. Over the following weeks, Chloe's status inside the family suddenly skyrocketed. My mother became almost worshipful. My father spoke about her with pride. They treated her like a savior. I couldn't understand why. Then the truth emerged. Chloe had found the document. She had seen every payment. Every amount. Every date. And instead of telling the truth, she stole it. She convinced our parents that she was secretly paying the mortgage. She claimed her investments were generating enormous returns. She said she wanted to protect their pride. My parents believed every word. Because they wanted to believe it. The lie fit perfectly into the fantasy they had spent years creating. The golden child had rescued the family. Not the invisible daughter. Never the invisible daughter. The consequences spread quickly. The Whitmore family became impressed with Chloe's apparent success. Her fiancé admired her even more. Wedding plans expanded. Budgets doubled. Then tripled. The celebration transformed into a $1 million spectacle. And somewhere along the way, my parents began looking at my lake house differently. Not as my property. Not as my home. As money. Available money. Waiting money. Future wedding money. Back in Seattle, sitting alone in my office after discovering the forged sale, I opened another file. The buyer's information appeared on the screen. Something immediately caught my attention. The purchase was scheduled to finalize in 4 days. 4 days. That was all. 4 days before the money changed hands. 4 days before the fraud became infinitely harder to stop. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the city lights beyond the window. For the first time, I wasn't thinking like a daughter. I was thinking like an investor. Like a strategist. Like someone preparing for war. And deep inside, I realized something my family had never understood. They believed they knew exactly who I was. The truth was far more dangerous. Because while they were planning a wedding, I was preparing an execution. Most people think revenge begins with anger. They are wrong. Real revenge begins with silence. For the next several hours after discovering the forged sale, I spoke to no one. Not my parents. Not Chloe. Not even my closest friends. The silence became my weapon. I sat alone in my office overlooking the Seattle waterfront while darkness slowly swallowed the city below. Cargo ships drifted across the harbor like shadows. Rain tapped softly against the glass. On my screen sat the documents that could destroy my family. The forged signature. The fraudulent transfer. The closing schedule. Every piece of evidence. I studied them the same way a surgeon studies an X-ray before an operation. Emotion had no place here. Only facts. Only strategy. The first thing I needed was proof. The second thing I needed was someone ruthless enough to use it. That person was Victoria Hale. Victoria was one of the most feared real estate attorneys on the West Coast. She had built her reputation dismantling corporate fraud schemes worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She did not care about family drama. She cared about evidence. 24 hours later, I was sitting across from her in a private conference room. The thick stack of documents rested between us. Victoria spent nearly 20 minutes reading without speaking. The room remained completely silent. Then she looked up. Her expression had changed. "What they did is criminal," she said. The words landed heavily. Not unethical. Not questionable. Criminal. For the first time since the phone call, I felt something shift inside me. Validation. Someone else finally saw what I saw. Victoria continued flipping through the pages. The forged signature. The property records. The transfer authorization. Then she stopped. A slow smile appeared. Not a warm smile. A dangerous one. "They made a mistake," she said. "What mistake?" "They assumed you would react emotionally." I leaned forward. Victoria tapped the closing schedule. "They gave us 4 days. The next 72 hours became a blur. Legal filings. Emergency petitions. Financial reviews. Investigations. By the second afternoon, a judge reviewed the evidence. By sunset, the sale was frozen. The transfer funds were locked. No money could move. No ownership could change. The entire transaction had been placed in legal handcuffs. My lake house was safe. But I wasn't finished. Because protecting myself was only half the battle. The real foundation of my parents' fantasy still existed. The mortgage. For 3 years, my money had quietly protected them. 3 years. 36 consecutive payments. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I logged into my banking portal late that night. The recurring transfer appeared on the screen. One click could erase it forever. My finger hovered above the mouse. For a moment, memories flooded back. Christmas dinners. Family photographs. Birthdays. The endless hope that one day they might love me the same way they loved Chloe. Then another memory appeared. My forged signature. My stolen home. My parents celebrating while selling my future. The hesitation disappeared. Click. The transfer vanished. The mortgage support ended. Immediately. I closed the laptop. A strange feeling washed over me. Not guilt. Freedom. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, my family was living inside a fantasy. Social media overflowed with wedding updates. Chloe posted photographs of designer dresses. Luxury. Floral arrangements. Private venue tours. Every image radiated confidence. Success. Entitlement. She looked like a queen preparing for her coronation. The comments poured in. Congratulations. Perfect couple. Dream wedding. No one knew the truth. No one knew the money no longer existed. No one knew the legal trap had already closed. Then something unexpected happened. The buyer contacted Victoria. His name was Gregory Mercer. A retired entrepreneur. Sharp. Experienced. Intelligent. Unlike my parents, Gregory understood business. And business people notice irregularities. The moment he learned the sale had been frozen, he started asking questions. Lots of questions. Within hours he discovered my professional background. Within another day he discovered something else. The woman whose property had supposedly been sold was not an ordinary homeowner. She was a major shareholder inside one of the fastest-growing investment groups in the Northwest. The same investment group currently negotiating acquisitions connected to several Whitmore business interests. Gregory immediately realized he had walked into a fraud case. And he was furious. For the first time, new fear entered the equation. Not my fear. Theirs. Because now another powerful person was looking directly at the evidence. And he wanted answers. The following evening, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother appeared. Natalie, we're having a family dinner on Friday. We'd love for you to come celebrate with us. Celebrate. I stared at the word. They had stolen my property. Forged my signature. Built an entire wedding on lies. And now they wanted me to celebrate. Slowly, I smiled. Then I typed my reply. Of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As soon as I pressed send, I looked out across the dark Seattle skyline. Far away, my family believed they were inviting a defeated daughter to dinner. What they didn't realize was that they had just invited the architect of their downfall. And I intended to arrive right on time. The ballroom glittered like a palace built from lies. Crystal chandeliers poured golden light across polished marble floors. White roses decorated every table. A string quartet played softly near the stage while servers moved gracefully through the crowd carrying silver trays filled with champagne. Everything looked perfect. That was exactly the problem. Because perfection built on deception always collapses. I arrived alone. The Whitmore family had reserved one of the most exclusive resorts in Idaho for the wedding weekend. Business leaders, investors, politicians, and social elites filled the room. Everyone important was there. Exactly as I had hoped. My parents sat proudly at the head table. My mother looked radiant in an expensive designer gown. My father carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed victory was already secured. And Chloe looked like royalty. Her diamond necklace sparkled beneath the chandeliers. Her smile was flawless. Her future seemed untouchable. As I took my seat near the back of the ballroom, I noticed something else. Gregory Mercer was there. The buyer. He sat quietly beside several investors, watching everything with calm, calculating eyes. He gave me a subtle nod. I returned it. The game was already moving. Dinner passed slowly. Laughter echoed across the room. Champagne glasses clinked. Wedding plans were discussed. Future investments were celebrated. Every conversation was built on assumptions that no longer existed. The money. The property. The lies. Then Chloe stood. The room immediately fell silent. She accepted the microphone and smiled warmly at the audience. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Applause followed. She continued speaking. Thanking her fiancé. Thanking the Whitmore family. Thanking her parents. Then her eyes found me. A slow smile crossed her face. I also want to thank my sister Natalie. The spotlight suddenly shifted toward my table. Hundreds of eyes followed. Chloe's voice became softer. More emotional. Natalie made an incredible sacrifice for this family. She understood how important this wedding was and chose to support us. Applause erupted. People turned toward me with admiration. Some even stood. They believed they were witnessing a touching family moment. They had no idea they were applauding a crime. I remained seated. Completely still. The applause slowly faded. Chloe waited for me to smile. To wave. To play my role. Instead, I stood. The room became quiet again. Very quiet. I picked up the red leather binder resting beside my chair. Then I began walking toward the stage. Each step echoed across the marble floor. The sound seemed unnaturally loud. Something shifted in the atmosphere. People sensed it. Even Chloe's smile began to fade. I reached the stage. Took the microphone from her hand. Then placed the heavy binder on the podium. The sharp impact echoed through the ballroom. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My sister is right, I said calmly. I did make a sacrifice. Confused expressions appeared throughout the audience. I opened the binder. Removed the first document. Held it high. This is the forged signature used to sell my lake house. The silence shattered. Gasps spread across the room. My mother's face instantly lost color. My father's hands gripped the table. Chloe froze. I continued. My parents sold my property without permission. They forged legal documents and attempted to steal over $600,000. The room erupted into whispers. People stared. Shock moved through the crowd like wildfire. I pulled out another document. The sale has already been frozen by court order. More gasps. Several investors exchanged alarmed looks. Then I delivered the second blow. The one that truly mattered. For the past 3 years, my parents believed Chloe was secretly saving the family home from foreclosure. I paused. Every eye remained fixed on me. She wasn't. I placed a stack of bank statements onto the podium. I was. The room went completely silent. Again. Every transfer. Every payment. Every month. 3 years of evidence. Displayed for everyone to see. Across the ballroom, Chloe looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. My mother began trembling. My father stared at the documents in horror. Then Gregory Mercer stood. Slowly. Deliberately. His voice carried across the room. I can confirm the transaction is under investigation. The silence deepened. But I wasn't finished. Because the greatest truth had not yet been revealed. I looked directly at the Whitmore family. Then at my parents. Then at Chloe. You all believed I was the quiet daughter who worked too much. I smiled. A calm smile. A dangerous smile. The truth is very different. I reached into the binder one final time. And revealed the documents that proved who I really was. The room was about to discover that the woman they dismissed for years possessed more power than anyone had ever imagined. And at that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. A uniformed courier stepped inside carrying an official foreclosure notice addressed to my parents. The timing could not have been more perfect. The foreclosure notice changed everything. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The ballroom remained frozen beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers. The courier stood near the entrance holding the official envelope. My father's face turned pale. My mother stared at the document as if it were a ghost. And Chloe. For the first time in her life, Chloe looked completely powerless. The illusion was dying. Right in front of everyone. The courier crossed the ballroom and handed the envelope directly to my father. His trembling fingers opened it. His eyes scanned the page. Then his shoulders collapsed. The reaction told everyone what they needed to know. It was real. The family home was being foreclosed. Whispers exploded throughout the ballroom. Guests exchanged stunned looks. Investors began checking their phones. Business leaders quietly moved away from my parents' table. No one wanted to be associated with financial fraud. Especially public financial fraud. My mother suddenly stood. Natalie, please, she whispered. Her voice cracked. The woman who had spent years dismissing me now looked terrified. Not because she regretted what she had done. Because she was finally facing consequences. I looked at her quietly. For a brief moment, I saw the fear behind her eyes. The panic. The desperation. The realization that everything she had spent decades building was collapsing. Then I remembered the forged signature. The stolen property. The laughter during that phone call. My sympathy disappeared. Across the ballroom, Jonathan Whitmore slowly rose from his seat. The powerful businessman looked directly at Chloe. Then at her fiancé. The disappointment on his face was unmistakable. This wedding is cancelled. His words landed like thunder. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Chloe staggered backward. Her fiancé lowered his head. The trust was gone. The future they had planned together had vanished. One sentence. That was all it took. Years of manipulation had finally reached their expiration date. The next few weeks unfolded exactly as Victoria predicted. Investigations began. The forged documents were examined. The fraudulent transaction was officially voided. The attorney who had approved the paperwork lost his professional license. Gregory Mercer filed his own legal claims. Every lie created another consequence. Every consequence created another collapse. The wedding vendors demanded payment. The resort demanded compensation. The luxury designers demanded reimbursement. Without the stolen money, the entire structure imploded. Like a mansion built on sand. 6 months later, the headlines had disappeared. The gossip had faded. The world had moved on. I was sitting on the balcony of my lake house when the final chapter arrived. The evening sun reflected across the water in ribbons of gold. The air smelled of pine trees and fresh rain. For the first time in years, there was no crisis. No emergency. No obligation. Only peace. The house belonged to me. Legally. Completely. The investment firm continued growing. Several major acquisitions had closed successfully. Ironically, some of the companies involved were worth far more than everything my parents had tried to steal. The greatest plot twist of all was simple. The daughter they treated as insignificant had become the most powerful person in the family. And they never even realized it until it was too late. A stack of unopened letters rested on a small table beside me. Every envelope came from the same address. My parents. Sometimes Chloe. Apologies. Excuses. Requests. I never opened them. Not one. Because healing is not about returning to the people who hurt you. Healing is about finally choosing yourself. I stood and walked toward the edge of the balcony. The lake shimmered beneath the setting sun. Somewhere beyond the mountains, my parents were living with the consequences of their choices. For years I believed love meant sacrifice. I believed loyalty meant endurance. I believed family meant accepting whatever pain came with the relationship. I was wrong. Love without respect becomes exploitation. Loyalty without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And family without integrity becomes something else entirely. The wind moved gently across the water. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. Not because I had won. Because I was finally free. The most valuable thing I recovered was never the lake house. It was my self-respect. And no one would ever take that from me again. If this story reminded you of someone who had to fight for their own worth, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else to find their strength. And if you enjoy powerful stories about justice, resilience, and unexpected payback, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable journeys on Still Waters Payback.